You're listening to Brayzen Bookworm's Unrighteous Reading Rebellion, a reformed book snob's journey and musings through all things romance. Some language may not be safe for all ears. Frequent use of sarcasm may occur.
We are super excited to be joined today by the amazing, the awesome, the spectacular Tia Louise. So you guys know us as the lkerSisters, and if you are not familiar with Tia Louise, please introduce yourself.
I am a romance author. I'll be celebrating my 10th year as a romance author in October.
Yes.
Mostly spicy romance. My first series was military. It was like an 8-book military romance series, but it was set in a small town on the coast. And so it had elements of romantic suspense. Like each book was a different couple, but then as the 8-book series went along, I revisited a couple of couples because they kind of had a story that kept going. Anyway, it's the One to Hold series. So that was my first big series. So that kind of launched me into this small town military, a little romantic suspense. That one probably has a little more of a crime element because the hero is a private investigator and there's some things going around the female main character that has to be handled. Anyway, it gets very exciting. But so that kind of kicked everything off. And I've kind of veered around a little bit. I've done a bad job of staying in my lane, but I'm doing much better now. So most of my books you will find are military, small town, single parent, single mom, single dad, both. I do love to throw in a little light suspense every now and then. So not every book has the suspense element in it, but I usually like to throw it in. My books are not dark. They're very sexy. I think there are a lot of peppers. I mean, it kind of goes by the couple. I let the couple guide me. If it's a peppery couple, then it'll get really peppery. But if it's kind of more of a, it just depends on the couple. So it's very romantic, very sensual. I'll say, wow, that was some 5 pepper one. And then I'll get a reviewer be like, 3 peppers. And so I don't know. It's your pepper call. You call the peppers.
And then
There's
you have to
got peppers
wonder,
in it.
what are they reading? Like if
I
this is
know, right? I
if
know,
they're reading
right?
this 3
And
peppers, and
so
I'm like,
I
what are
never
they
know what
reading?
to say. Right. I know. And people are like, so here's the thing. If Sierra Simone's Priest is your 5 peppers, I have a couple like that, but my pepper zone is usually 3 to 4 peppers. So I have a few that are up there, but mostly kind of in the mid pepper range.
I'm here for
So
it. I'm here
that's
for a good
me.
story.
And
So
you
Yeah.
can learn more about my books at tialouise.com/books. That's easy, huh? So, and the cool thing about that is if you go into one of my books pages, I love my web designer set this up. I have like the subgenre, the tropes, uh,
nice.
hot unit, what's it called? Linked. And so like you can click on military romance and it'll take you to a page with all of my books that are military romance, or if you want single dad, all single dad, nanny, so it's
Nice.
really cool. So
I
that is
love
the
it.
coolest thing ever. I discovered that the other day and I was like, oh, they're all together. Anyway, I discovered how my own website
I
works the other
like,
day.
don't you love when you go to something that's yours and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. I
I
kind of like
know. And I was
that.
like, I looked at it, I was like, this is beautiful. I love it. And then just got back to writing, because I think I was in the middle of writing a book. And then when I was updating and I was like adding, because I was looking at the page where inside the guts where you put all the information in. And then I saw like subgenres and I was like clicking them. And then when I went and I saw they were all hyperlinked and I was like, and so then I was like, oh my God. And so then I'm like trying to tell everybody and they're like, what are you talking? Well, I don't care. Anyway, but that's so cool. Because I'm
No,
always
that's perfect.
asked that. Yeah.
I love it when authors do that because it's like if I'm looking for something specific, or if there are certain things I don't like, it's like, okay, well, this is really heavy on the angst. So,
Right.
it's the brother's best friend and the
Yes.
fake relationship, and those tend to be a little bit more high angst versus ones that are, you know, maybe not. So like the second chance or things like that. So I love
Right.
that you can do that. Plus, if I'm starting with a brand new author and I can go to their website and see, okay, this is what they write. This is a series, but I kind of like these tropes. So if they're standalones, I'll start with standalones
Hmm.
because I may not have time to get invested right away in an 8-book series, but I want to read an author. So I'm like, okay, cool. That's a standalone. Of course, then I read the standalone. I love the author, and then I read their entire backlist. But
Which is a good
this
thing.
is what I
That's what you
do.
should always do.
I have gone down
Always
so
do
many
that.
author rabbit holes because I'm like, oh, look, a standalone. I'll read this standalone novella. 3 months later, their entire backlist is check, 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 check,
That's
check. Because
awesome.
I
Yeah,
love
and
finding new
that is
authors.
what I do. My books are usually like for instance, my current series, as you know, is brothers. And so each book is that brother's romance and so then the next book is the next brother. So they are standalones in that way, but they're all in the same town. And obviously, since they're brothers, they're gonna be in each other's books because they're
Right.
family, but they're standalone romances. So, that's kind of how I've always done it. I don't think I've ever maybe once I wrote a true actually the Prince Player Dealer Thief. The first two books in that series are a true like 1-2 because that was all I was going to write were those two books and they were a duet. And then people really liked it, so I wrote two more, and like one is one of the bodyguards and then another one goes back. Anyway, but I typically don't really write
Love that.
super tied series where you have to read every book in order or you don't know what's happening. So I don't know. I don't do that.
I love a good interconnected standalone because
Yes,
that means
so
I
they're
can read
all
just that book. But then
mhm.
it's like, oh, I want this one's story and I want that one's story. And then, you have little jump offs to different series and interconnected that way. So I'm here for
It's
that.
crazy. I know. And when I think I'm done, I'm constantly getting messages being like, write so and so, write so and so, write so and so. And it's like sometimes I'll be like, okay, because I'll be like, that character is actually talking to me and I can see a story for them. And then sometimes I'm just like, y'all, I don't know if it's my brain or what, but I'm just not getting anything for that person. It's like I have that Boss of Me, Wait for Me, Here with Me, and Reckless Kiss, that series. And everybody after reading Boss of Me, everybody was like wanted this one character's Marley's romance. They were like, are you gonna write his story? Are you gonna write his story? And I was kind of like, well, the truth is, in my original outline for that book, I was going to have him die. But I
Oh,
pulled back from that. I pulled back from that because I was like, as I was writing, I was like, oh no, that's just going to be way too dark and too much of a downer. And I was like, I don't see them recovering from that. Like the hero, it's a military, and all the heroes in that series were like together in the military, and they had this incident that happened that's just kind of binds them all together. And he was the character that got kidnapped that they had to rescue, and so he's very tortured, and he was tortured, and so he has like all of these like problems. And so I was like, we'll just, this is gonna happen. And then when I got there, I was like, oh no, I can't do that. I was like, that's just gonna be too much. That's gonna be way too much for everybody. And I could just not see the hero getting over it. And I was like, as much as he loves our female main character, he's gonna go to a dark place, and I don't know how I'm gonna get back from it. So I just decided that he's not gonna die. He's just gonna have this bad incident, and he's gonna be okay though. And so at the end, he's fine.
thank you for that.
Oh, okay. So you read it. But anyway, so
I know
yeah, so I didn't feel
I haven't, but that's kind of one of
okay.
those
I
things
know,
where I'm like,
right? Sometimes I get these grand ideas, and then when I actually get in there and do it, I'm like, oh God, that's the dumbest idea ever. And so I like don't do it. But yeah, and I don't
now I
write.
know where I'm going next after
Yeah, well, and I
I
don't
know which
typically
series I'm
write.
going to do.
Yeah, I try not to kill characters, I mean, I'm
Thank
trying
you.
to think if I ever, unless they're really bad and they need to
Well,
be
yes.
killed. Yes, I'll kill those people. But I mean, like somebody who's like in the group, who's a friend, I don't do that just because, I mean, I don't know, I haven't done it yet. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. But I typically don't write really dark stuff. But anyway, so or stuff like that, where it's very just like, ugh. But anyway, so I came back, and now everybody's like, write his story, write his story. And I'm like, you don't understand, he's dead to me. I'm like, he is
You've
dead
moved
to me.
on.
No, I'm kidding, he's not. But I'm just like, well, I hadn't really planned for like I didn't, so anyway, so people are begging, well, not anymore, but that's been a couple of series ago. But I'll always get these like messages, are you going to write his story? And I'm like, well, did you read the epilogue? Because he kind of got his HEA if you read
Yeah.
the epilogue, and he's done, the end for him. But
And
anyway,
sometimes
I
that's
guess I could.
enough.
He was just really messed up, you know what I mean? And writing his story would be off brand, I feel like, for me, because he has a lot of problems, and I think that would be it would be darker than I typically like to go, because he has drug
Mhm.
problems and he does a lot of things. And anyway, that book is a lot about the hero kind of keeping up with him and feeling responsible, because he was the
Sure.
head of their unit. He was in charge, and then he got kidnapped on his watch, and then he led the rescue. And so he feels very responsible for this character.
Mhm.
And so he's like so a big part of his problem is not being able to let this guy go. Anyway, I'm gotten sidetracked, but anyway,
I told you, no rails.
I know,
There's no
right?
rails here. We
So,
just kind
but
of go with the
that
flow.
right, but that said, yes, so they're all, and I typically know how long a series is gonna be, but sometimes if readers are begging for a story and I can think of one, I'll give it to them, if something comes to me. So, it's
I
it's
love that part of being an author, though, like with the authors I work with like, this person wasn't supposed to get a book, but they're so loud in my brain
yeah,
that they're getting a book. Um,
right.
and that's happened with 3 different authors that I edit so far, where they're like, I have to write this character story now. They weren't supposed to have one, but they won't shut up. So
Yeah,
now they're getting their own book. And then there are other characters that it's like crickets. Like they're
yeah,
supposed to get a book, but if they don't start talking soon, then they're not getting their book. Or it's like, okay, they have to wait for whatever because they'll write 3 more books and then come back because they finally start talking. But that's one of the amazing things with being, I think, with talking to different authors and hearing from different authors is the process that you go through of how you choose who you write, when you write it, why certain characters never get a story,
mhm,
and why certain characters do.
yeah.
So I
It's
think that's
true.
pretty cool.
You and you can never really predict it either. Like sometimes I'll be writing and I don't even think, like I'll have a throwaway character who I'm not even thinking about, and then they turn into somebody who's like, write me," and it's like, "Oh, okay." So,
All right.
all right,
Your
here
story.
you go.
Okay.
You
I
know.
love it. So now that Susie's joined us, we're going to do a quick little round thing here of how we found you, what we've read, and then going right into talking about Taste and Twist, which are the newest ones. That's the newest
Yes.
series, which I think we've all read, and I absolutely love it. But so
Oh,
we always talk about how we found an author, and um, normally they always blame me, and this time y'all
yes.
can't. Not all of you anyway. But Ron, how did you find Tia originally? We were talking about this a little bit online earlier too.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and I kind of feel like I've always known her. She
Aw.
just kind of just has always been a part of my reading. So I dug and I dug back through, and it's not in my Ron Persona Kindle account, and I'm like, that doesn't seem. I know I read something before that, so I went back through my private account, and I think I found her in the One to Hold series
Oh,
10 years ago.
I was gonna say
I,
that was the
so I
one.
really,
Nice.
really have known her forever.
That was the big first series, so that kind of locked me into the military zone. Yeah, because
Yeah.
people loved that series. I did too. I did too. It was hard to let it go at the end there after book 8. I was like,
Yeah.
do I need? Well, my husband was even like, "You didn't finish. You didn't give them they didn't never got married." And he'd be like, "These characters never got married." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Do you think I should keep going?" I'm like, "8 books? How many am I going to write?" I'm like, "Nobody's going to jump in an 8-book series." I mean, I just felt like, I guess I could maybe revisit it, but I just felt like it had gotten so big that I was like, I need to start something more manageable.
Does your husband read all of your books?
He does. He does.
Huh.
I
Well,
love
in the
that.
beginning, he was like my first editor because I was kind of undercover, and I had been writing YA, and so I was undercover writing women's romance, and so I'd launched a new pen name because I didn't want to cross those streams and stuff, and so it's kind of just like, we'll see how this goes, and if it doesn't do any well, no harm, no foul, just let it go. And so he read the first, oh, and he's the meanest editor. Oh my God. We used to get in so many fights because he would be like, he would write comments like, "Why did you do this? Why did I do this? What?" And then he circled a paragraph one time and wrote something like, "This makes no something." What was the word? Sense. He was like, "This makes no some fancy word, English lawyer word sense." And I'm like, you're so mean. And he would never give like a compliment. Nothing was ever good. It was always bad. It was bad, bad, bad. Like if he read something he liked, he wouldn't say anything about it. Like when you're an editor, you're supposed to say, I loved this. I thought you did great on this. This needs some work, right? You 2 compliments and a criticism. That's how you do it. That's how you not destroy somebody's spirit. Oh my God, he was so mean. He would give me this legal pad full of notes, and his handwriting is not that good. So it was like very angry looking scrawl. And I'd be like, I wouldn't even talk to him. I'd just be like, go away. I am so mad at you right now. He's like, what? He's like, what did I do? What did I do? You know, and I'd be like, look at this note. And he was like, well, that is kind of harsh, isn't it? I'm like, oh, yes. I was like, oh my God, did I do anything right in this book? And he'd be like, well, yeah, I really liked, you know, and he'd tell me certain things. But one time he's just a mess. Anyway, he was funny. So he still reads all my books to
love
today, even though
that.
I have like proofreaders and editors and everybody else. He's still like the last, I think it was 2 books ago. I didn't know if he had time because he was working on a case and stuff. And I didn't know if he'd have time. And I was like, and I just was going with it. He goes, you're not gonna let me read it? And I was like, yeah. I was like, of course I'll let you read it. I was like, I didn't know if you wanted to. I didn't, you know, I read all my
Aw.
like number 38 or something. I'm like, you're still in it? You want to read it? He's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, yeah, of course you can read it.
I love that.
He felt
Right?
left
Great.
out because he didn't
I
have
know.
to
He was
read.
like, you didn't want me to read your book? He's like, what did you write? And he's like, what did you write? I'm like, well, you see, there's a
Ooh.
main character named his name and he murdered them. No, I'm kidding. I didn't. He got mysteriously poisoned.
Oh my God.
I'm just teasing. None of that
Julie,
happened.
how did you find Tia?
Oh, well, funny. I think it was Hutch Winston.
Yes, girl. Yes.
It was the cover. It drew me in, and then I read the
Hot.
blurb. And
That was my last series. Fearless, Filthy. Yes. Those were bodyguards. Those were military bodyguard. That was a little closer to the One to Hold series. I kind of thought I want to kind of go back but it was a little darker than One to Hold. One to Hold doesn't, well, maybe in one book. Yeah, okay. So those books were a little darker than the One to Hold series. The One to Hold series didn't get really, and those are not that dark. Don't get confused. I know, Julie, right. I'm trying to clear up for the readers. This is not really dark. We're not talking like hands getting cut off and end up in a box on your front porch. Nothing like that. But just more like drugs and people getting murdered and like not main characters. I already said I'm not killing any friend. Well, you know what I mean. Anyway, go ahead, Julie. I need to stop. Go, Julie.
Wow, that was it. I just, I run a group, and it's all about protectors and bodyguards. It's one of them, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll read this, and then I've pretty much read everything after.
Yeah, well, thank
Nice.
you. How many peppers?
And that
I thought it was a lot of peppers, didn't you?
I am not great at remembering all those little details. I'm gonna say a 4.
Yeah,
I gave it a lot of peppers. Some people were like, 3 peppers. I'm like,
I
really?
I think Fearless is 4, but I think
was
Filthy
gonna
is
say.
5.
5, definitely.
And Forbidden?
With a name like
in
Filthy,
the
it
alley?
kinda has
Oh my
to.
God. Okay. All right.
Susie, what about you? Susie, how'd you find Tia?
Michelle.
How did I get involved in this one this time?
You're the one that threw Fearless in my face when it came out.
Susie's like, peer pressure.
You know what? I'm a shameless enabler. I am not going to deny that I will push books from authors I love in everybody's face, and I'm not going to stop. So there.
I will allow it.
I actually found you, and it was kind of like all at the same time. Julie posted about, it was one of those books, and it was right around the same time as Indies last year.
Oh, yeah.
And
Philly.
I met in Philly, and Ron and Avery were like, have you met Tia? You have to meet Tia. And I was like, oh, I know that name because Julie read a book, and she said, you have to read this. And I was like, okay. So that's actually how when I met you was Philly's last year, Indies Invade Philly last year, and started reading things. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, look, let's flip. We're going to just keep reading everything because I am one of those readers where it's like, okay, I'm drawn to books and I'm drawn to tropes. But if I connect with a person, with the reader, as a writer, if I connect with that, okay, as a reader, if I connect with that writer as a person, I'm going to read everything
That's
because
awesome. Yeah.
I just love to support people that I like. It's
Aw,
so much
thank
easier than
you.
supporting people I don't. And
That's true.
right, when I find someone I like, I'm like, oh, you're a writer and I really like that story. So, okay, I'm going to now read everything. And I'm going to stalk you on social media, and I'm going to bug you to do a podcast. So
Yay!
thanks for doing this.
No, it's totally great. I
So
love
I
it.
don't think Taste and Twist was the first, especially Twist was not the first book that any of us read. We'd all read your books before then. I think A Little Taste was the first book I read, and I think I'm wrong on that. I think there was another one, and now I cannot remember which one it was, but I'm going to go with Taste for now.
Okay.
Julie, what was the first one you read?
I think it was Fearless.
Was it?
Yeah.
Susie, what about you? And Ron, you said from the
And I'm
beginning.
an old timer right from the beginning.
One
to
to
hold.
hold.
And I think I read it. I think I read the paperback.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm doing a big celebration the weekend of October 5th, 13, 14, 15 for it. So be sure to check that out. You
Ooh,
come.
Absolutely.
Be sure to keep your eyes open for that, everybody.
Yeah, definitely. We'll put that up and we'll post about that too, because I love following things
Well,
like
it's the
that.
anniversary, so I figured I should do
Yay.
something
Oh,
right.
yes. Absolutely. I mean, do we have favorite books? I mean, I know all of y'all, your favorite books are all filthy, aren't they?
Oh, that was a good one. That one I knew was going to be very angsty, and it was awesome, and I loved it because those two characters were so like wounded and had so much to
Yeah.
overcome.
And that cover was just
Cover,
awesome.
And that cover is hot. I
Both
know,
versions,
right?
both versions of that whole series. The alternate covers for that series are stunning and
Thank you.
just absolutely gorgeous. And the not alternate covers are hot. So I almost
Yeah.
want both copies. I want copies of both because
I've done that. I've bought when
I'm
an author
actually
has covers that I love, I will buy both covers because I
And you
can't
know,
not have them both.
my original plan there was not to do model covers in the paperbacks. I was only going to do paperbacks in the special edition cover. That's all. And I got talked out of that. And so, because I have readers who are like, I want my men. And I'm like, okay, because it's no sweat off my back. I mean, I put them up on Amazon and it's just the inside's the same. It's just two different covers. You know, I already have anyway. So I was like, really? Okay. I was like, done. That's easy. And so, but yeah, it initially was just going to do those pretty gorgeous, discreet, I guess,
Smiling.
special edition covers. And that's the first time, actually lied. That's the second time. I had never done special edition covers until we did that Bayside Heroes, that series that I was in with Candy Steiner and Harlow Ray. And Candy designed all those covers. She designs her own covers. She's her own cover designer. And so she had designed all those covers, and then she wanted to do special editions and hardbacks and all that. And I was like, okay. I mean, like I said, I'm just along for the ride. So I was like, yeah. So she designed them all and did them all. And I liked the special edition covers of that series so much. That's the one with the Ferris wheel, Tangled Up is that book, Tangled Up. And I was like, wow, that was really nice, because I felt like that's a scene in the book that we kind of pulled out and did that with, and I really loved it. So I was like, well, I'm doing that now. So that kind of kicked it all off. So, now I do.
Janice did a cool thing with her one of her releases where she did book jackets. So she did like the one cover, and then you could get the book jacket. And I'm like, ooh, there's a swag. That's a swag idea.
I love that.
Here's the discreet cover. If you want the man cover, you got to come see me.
Yes.
I still am kind of investigating how to do all that stuff. I just got back from NINC, which is Novelists Inc. It's like a industry conference where everybody gets together and tells all the cool stuff they're doing. And I'm telling you, I just came back with my brain just exploding with ideas. But one of them is kind of getting more into, like, I'm going to try to do hardcovers more, because I've never done a hardcover before. And it's mostly because I just didn't know how, and I didn't have time to investigate. But apparently, according to my paperback formatter, they're not that hard. So it's mainly just finding a cover designer. I mean, I have my cover designer, but just I'm letting the cat out of the bag for my surprise, but like finding someone to do it. And so I found like somebody who'll print it, because the dust jackets, Amazon doesn't do that. Like they'll do a hardcover for you, but the dust jacket is another step. And so I found at Nink last week someone who does that. So so the wheels are turning. I'm figuring this out. I'm very excited. So I'll be able to have more fancy stuff like that for folks. So I'm very excited.
As a reader who loves to have all the covers, it's nice to have one book with 2 covers, because shelf space is really precious and I don't want to put anybody in a box.
Right.
So when I saw those with the covers on them, the jackets, I was like, that's very cool.
Oh, it's because it's 2 books in one, kind of, basically. Yeah, that's brilliant. I love that.
And the thing that I thought was brilliant about it, we are really off subject, by the way.
That's okay.
No rails.
But it is so daggone expensive to ship to the UK. And if you have a dust jacket, you can sign it. They can purchase their own book. And,
that is so smart. It is. That is so smart. I don't even think about that. That's brilliant, Julie. Thank you for that hot tip.
And for UK authors,
get my
shipping to the
notebook
States
out.
too.
Starts taking notes. Julie is giving me ideas.
Julie is a wealth
Invites
of
Julie
information
to
on
Nink
that.
next year. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm serious.
Write a book, Julie,
needs to
quick.
run
No, I'm
her,
kidding.
Julie needs to run her own little workshop on all these little tips and tricks that she's learned, because she's like a super wealth of
No,
information.
that is absolutely so smart. I love that.
I just think it's a way. I always feel bad for people in other countries. I get why authors can't ship. It's just stupid expensive.
It's ridiculous. It really
But this way they get a piece of you, but they, it's a whole lot less expensive to ship.
try, if it's, I'll ship somebody a book from their Amazon. It's nice that Amazon has locations in all these places, like Australia, for instance. So I can like ship somebody a paperback from the Amazon Australia store, and it's not that expensive. Of course, it's not signed, but then I have like the little swag that I will sign. Of course, this one's not signed because I'm using it as an example. But like I'll like have like a book plate, and then I'll sign it and I'll mail it to them, because an international stamp is not $50 like mailing a book is. But so that I try to do that, and that kind of makes up for it a little bit. But I know it's not the same. But I like that. I like that dust jacket idea. That's a cool idea. So I like that. I like that a lot.
And even as a domestic US reader, I love getting things from authors that are relevant to the book, but not necessarily the book. I love getting books. Don't get me wrong. I get signed books in the mail. I do a happy dance. I love it. I am such a book whore, but I love getting the little things like the postcards and stickers and magnets and coasters. My husband's like, "What are you going to do with the coaster?" And I'm like, "Watch." And I have them on my shelf, and they're just kind of lined up. And it's a neat little something that's relevant to the book that adds a little extra flair to it. And I'm like, I love getting little swag packs like that. They make me very happy. So not turning down anything like that. In fact, I have yours up on my shelf, because I had gotten a little swag pack from you with postcards and some stickers, and I was like, my husband was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "This is so cool."
And with my daughter doing all those illustrations, I made her, make cute little illustrated postcards and stuff.
I love those.
Yeah, I know. I love that she's doing that now. When she was home this summer, she got slammed, but it was fun. It was fun how she was able to do all that stuff for the different books. I loved it. Anyway.
Well, and it's something special and unique. And for people who don't have all the room to put up all these bookshelves, you can put them in binders, and you can put them in shadow boxes, and you can display them cork boards. And it's a neat way to connect with the story you loved and the characters you loved and the author you love without, all that space. Because I know not everybody has. I'm slowly taking over my husband's side of the office with I
need another bookshelf. I don't know if you can see how exploding my bookshelf is back here. And we have walls of bookshelves in the living room, and then I've got bookshelves in the basement. And I'm like, I hate putting books in the basement. I hate it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm like, I need another bookshelf. I'm like running out of room. But I hear you. All that to say, I feel your pain.
I need a library with one of those ladders that, a rolling ladder.
I know. I love it.
Wow, we are way off track. Okay.
Quote.
So
It'll be like
rails.
Belle. Oh, what does she do? She gets on the ladder and does her little spin. Anyway.
We were originally, the plan originally was going to talk about Twist.
Yes.
Little Twist,
Little
which
Twist.
is the new one. But I love that we're talking about everything. But A Little Twist is the new one, and it's the second one in the series.
Yes.
And I know we all pulled some quotes, and I know a great way to get people to kind of dive into a book sometimes is they'll hear something that resonates with them. So we pulled a ton of quotes,
Whoa.
and we're not going to read all of them because I was going to say we have self-control. No, we don't. Who am I kidding? But we're going to read a couple of them. So, all right, ladies, Stalker Sisters, pick a quote. I know we have each have 4 of them. Pick a quote, and we're each going to read one quote. And I'm going to go first because I picked a bunch, but this one I keep coming back to because it resonated with me on a level, not because of the main characters, but what I like to call a main character that's like a minor minor character. I don't know. It's Pinky.
Oh, the little
And
girl. Yeah, I
oh
was
my
like, I have
gosh,
no idea
little
what's
girl.
coming.
Yes, so it's about Pinky,
cute.
and it resonated with me because this is kind of how we raised our spawns. And the quote is, "She's also 4 years old in a town where no one has ever told her what she couldn't do." And
Oh,
I read that line and I told all my friends, I was like, the first person who clues my kids in about what gravity is, you're
Yeah.
dead to me. Don't.
I know.
Let them
It's the
think that they
truth.
can do whatever they want to. And I loved the way you developed the character of Pinky as her own character, but a character that was so instrumental in the story of the 2 main characters. And at the same time, she had this beautiful light around her. And it was because of how she was raised, not just by her dad, but by her community.
Yeah.
And that resonated so strongly with me because I saw so much of my spawns in
Aw,
Pinky
I love
that I was
that.
like, oh, I love this little one. So that for me was the one that really got me.
Aw,
All right,
makes
who's
me so
next?
happy.
Julie, you're up.
Okay.
Roll call.
Yep.
It's tough. You didn't tell us we could only do one.
Oh,
If we have time, we'll come back. If we have time, we'll circle back around.
He was so annoying. He didn't like kissing with his tongue. He
Oh, no.
hated the sound of chewing. If he didn't like tongue kissing, I'm guessing he didn't like other tongue things.
just saying,
Come on. You gotta like tongue things.
I love that.
Right.
right?
Is a hero who doesn't like tongue things even a hero?
No, not at all.
Drake is such a douche. No, I'm kidding.
Susie?
I actually had that line in my head before I even started writing him. I was like, he's the worst. How can I just make him even worse than what he already is? Like, I had a picture of him in my head of what he looked like. And then I was like, yeah, but this isn't a movie. Okay, I can't cast him. So I was like, I've got to give personality things about him that just makes him so gross. And he's so arrogant and he's so bleh.
And
Well,
he
and that's
becomes
what's so funny.
with it.
is
Yeah.
Out of all the quotes, they're all funny. I don't know. I must have been in a funny mode.
Clarification in case anybody's like, what? That's the douchey ex. That's her
Yes.
douchey we're talking
Not the hero.
about.
But
Not
I like, yeah.
And he plays
I
a pretty major role in the story as far as
He's a plot driver.
together. He's a plot driver, exactly. And painting that picture of him as just this, ew, it works. It works
Such a
really
jerk.
well.
Such
He's
a jerk. So full of himself. Ugh.
Susie?
Susie.
You're everything to me. You're the wind and the sea when I'm the rocks and the sand. You're the calm, the soothing. You quiet the storm and make me whole. You're the song in my head I never want to stop hearing. You're beautiful and smart and kind. You're priceless.
I know everybody's like, that was very
The
critical.
sappy ones always resonate to me for some reason.
You're a hopeless romantic.
Yeah,
I love
that's always
it.
awesome. I love that.
Oh, Ron.
I'm trying to decide which one.
I know.
So I'm going to do the long one because I liked it. Your first is always special. Not always. Her eyes slide away from mine, and I don't like the sound of that. I'm surprised by my desire to beat the crap out of any man who didn't treat her with the respect and the reverence she deserves. In what way was it not special? My tone reflects my irritation, and her eyebrows rise. She rolls to her side, facing me, and a little smile curls her lip. You're the first time I haven't faked an orgasm at least once. Shaking her head, she looks down at her hand resting on the duvet. Usually more than once.
With the whole douche canoe, you know, every time.
Exactly.
He was all about himself, and everything you put into that character
Everything.
showed he was all about himself.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
terrible.
It-
He's the
Yeah, we have
worst.
He was, and I love that you used him as a plot driver and that he was present, because a lot of times the plot drivers are not. It's like something in the past and it's something that moves forward, but he was a pretty significant part of the story.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of we left the end of the story, he's not done, is
Mm-mm.
he? Yeah.
No, he'll be back. He's the worst. He's coming back. But don't worry, we'll deal with him in the next book. Well, he's just determined. You know, he sees this community that's got right near the beach that has to have this huge resort on it. I mean, he's a developer, so he's kind of got a bee in his bonnet. So, in the next book, it's going to be a little funnier, but everybody was like, well, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to spoil anything, but everybody was like really wanting a certain thing to happen to him in this book, and I was like, well, that situation, the opportunity never actually presented itself. I mean, I know there was that one scene where he shows up uninvited, but I was like, Alex ain't gonna do that in front of his kids, in front of all the children. He's not gonna do that. He's way too controlled and very, you know, he's always got his hands on everything. He'd like to, but he's not gonna do that. And of course, he's not gonna make a scene in front of all the children, but
But when there's no children present,
I don't know what
I'm
might happen.
wondering.
Anyway, but
and I'm jumping around in the questions a little bit just because you just said that, but this is a small beach town.
yes.
And is Eureka a brand new town for this series?
Yeah, I just made that up. I mean, I imagined it. I kind of looked at the map so I could kind of get an idea in my head of where to put it. But then I just made up the name. In the past, I think, I don't know if I've ever used the actual name for a place. Oh, I think I did in Trouble. In Trouble, I had them in Columbia or something. And and so I was like, I can't believe you knew about this and that and this and that. And I was like, Google. But the thing is, like, if you haven't ever been to a place, you know how it is. There are going to be things, and Google can't always get it right. And so, and it leaves things out, you know. So if you're not from there and you put it there, and they're all natives of this place, there are going to be things that natives know about their hometown. That, especially if it's a small town. I mean, everybody knows everything about a small town, right? So, and so I was like, you know, I made that. I kind of got myself there once, and I was like, and I was doing all this research, and like, why did I do this? Because, you know, then I'm like, you know, an insider's guide, like I'm Googling an insider's guide, and they still don't include everything.
Yep.
You know? And so I was like, okay, from now on, all fictitious locations, but they're fictitious locations in real places. So they, you know, so they're kind of based on a place, but it's fictitious. So that way, if it's like, well, that's not in X place, I'm like, well, it's because it's not X place. It's my
Right. It's my
it's
place.
my place. I made up. But anyway,
Yes. So what's your draw? Because a lot of it happened in that, like the Grand Strand, that Hilton Head area.
well, I'll tell you, the One
What's
to
the
Hold
draw?
series, yeah, the One to Hold series is all set in that area. That was my first big series, you know, and one of my friends who was reading it was like, you know, oh, it's because of Dawson's Creek, right? And I was like, whoop. And I was like, no. I was like, I didn't ever really watch that show. It's kind of I was a little ahead of that show. So it was coming on when I was in college, and I wasn't watching TV in college. And I was out drinking. No, I'm kidding. But right. But anyway, so I was like, oh, really? I was like, no, I lived for about 7 years in a small town near the coast in South Alabama, and I loved it. And it was cram full of characters. And in my former life, I was a journalist, and so I was writing for the newspaper there, because this was back when people still got newspapers. And I did a lot of features on, like, you know, I did a recurring, well, it was me and 2 other people, but we did like these recurring kind of get to know this person, and people could nominate different people. And so I was getting to know all these hilarious, awesome, great people. And it's just, I just kind of got, it gave me this whole feel for the whole area, and just really got to know the area, and just being right there on the coast. It's really pretty. And so I loved it. I loved that so much. And so I just kind of, it was a way to revisit that, kind of setup. And so since I put that there, I was like, well, I'll just stay in that area, because I'd already kind of been doing research in that area for that series. And so I felt like I kind of knew the area. So I just kind of stayed in that, and just started making up fake places. And I tell you what is so great, because I'm planning to do a next gen series. Next, whenever I finish this one, I'm going to do a next gen with the kids, grown up. And it's so great because they're all so close together that it's very likely that they would cross paths either through sports or, because how it is, the high schools and all always intersect, and they all go to the same college, because there's only usually a couple of colleges that everybody goes to, unless, they go away to college, which they could. But I only have a few series that are not like the Fight for Love series, which is Boss of Me, Wait for Me, those books. And Boss of Me is set in Nashville, and Wait for Me and Here with Me are both set in Louisiana on a peach farm near where my husband grew up, because that was at his request. He was like, because I was thinking, I was like, where am I going to set this? And he was like, why don't you set it at this peach farm that's there, but I changed the name. And so that's, but I'm like, I have an idea of how I can get Dove to where they all are anyway, because she go to college there, right? Kids do that all the time. They'll be like, I want to go to, whatever college, because it's on the coast, and she's landlocked in North Louisiana. So, so anyway, so I kind of have, but other than that, they're all kind of right there together, and they can, I don't know if you noticed in A Little Taste that I mentioned Fireside as one of the people that they or actually was in a little twist that Gwen had gotten with the Fireside Ladies. And in my books, This Much Is True, Twist of Fate, and Trouble, those books, they're set in the town that they all live in. There's the Fireside Ladies Club, and they were like historical, and they documented the town's history, but they also did spells. They also had like a book of spells that they would cast on people, like that they didn't like, or to bring things back, or to protect, and they had all these little spells that they did. And so I kind of brought that in with Gwen saying she got with the Fireside Ladies. That totally, of course she did, because of course Gwen would do that. So anyway, so I kind of did a little connection there with that. So anyway, so that's fun. So I guess to answer your question is, I started there, so I just stayed there.
I spend a lot of time on the coast between Hilton Head and Myrtle, and it was neat to, because it's like, okay, I'm reading about this, and I'm like, God, that sounds like Beaufort. Like there's all these tiny little towns, and it's not necessarily your big beach town, but it's adjacent. And
I actually was on a writer's retreat. Yeah, I was actually on a writer's retreat in Kiowa. Look at what I have here.
Oh.
I know. I went on a little writer's retreat with some author buds several years ago, and we were all at Kiowa Islands, and it was like about 10 or 12 of us, and we all had a big house, and we spent like 3 or 4 days there writing, and so I kind of got to be there and see what it was like. So that was fun. So that was cool.
See, times like that are why I like audiobooks, because you have all these little small towns, and you're like, how the hell do you say that name? And then you hear it, and you're like, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Because otherwise, in my brain, I'm just reading it how I see it. And I learned from living in New Orleans for 4 years, you don't ever read anything the way you see it.
It's all French. It's all French. So.
It's all Cajun. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, Kiowa, what?
Kiowa. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Kiowa.
And my audiobook narrator got it wrong, but it was said so many times, and I didn't want to the audiobook, so I guess I could have changed it, but it would have been a lot. And so I was just like, we're just gonna let it go. I've got more people be like, that is not how you say that word. And I'm like, I know.
Just go with it. Just go with it.
I know. I was like, just let it happen. Just let it happen. We're
suspension of reality.
Just let it happen. I was like, I know. Just pretend they're saying it right. but they were like, no, how you say Kiowa. And I'm like, I know, but it was so many times. Anyway, it
I'm
was
just gonna let it
and
go.
it never occurred to me. It never occurred to me. Like when I sent in that script, I usually have got like everything, and it just totally did not even hit me that that would happen. But anyway, yes, I did that.
And that's one of the neat things about reading. And I always say you can tell if somebody's never heard a word before if they only know it from reading when you hear them say it the first time.
Yeah.
You know, and it could be a name or something else. And I always joke with my husband about it. I won't say it because I won't embarrass. I should totally embarrass him. But you can tell when someone's never heard a word said and they've always read it. They know exactly what it means. They know how to use it. And the first time they say it, and you're like,
What? What?
the confused dog head tilt. I'm like,
It's
huh?
true. It's true.
What?
Yes.
Ron, you started to say something.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask Tia, you said that you started out your career in journalism. How do you make that transition from journalism to
To
authoring?
writing books.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, so I got my degree in English, and then I went back and got my master's degree in communications. And so, because I wanted to work at the paper, I wanted to be a print journalist, and I loved it. I fell in love with print journalism when I saw All the President's Men, you know, Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman, and it was so much drama. It was so cool. And then there was another movie with what's his face? Dang it, the original Batman. You know who I'm talking about. Oh, what is his name? Mommy, Mr. Mom, or you know who I'm talking about. Keaton.
Yeah.
That guy.
Michael.
Anyway, Michael Keaton. Ugh.
Beetlejuice.
Anyway, he was in that movie, The Paper. Remember
Yes.
The Paper? That was so fun,
God, that was
right? It just makes it look like, oh, anyway, so it just looks like all this drama, all this awesome drama, right? And so I was like, that's what I want to do. So I was just like, I could see me just blowing the lid off of stuff and everything. And so what I ended up doing was a lot of business profiles. And I actually wrote for the religion section for a while, which was very fun. I really enjoyed that. And it was like things that churches were doing around town, like raising money and, you know, things like that. And so it's mostly just like, you know, community stuff that I ended up doing, which was fine because I enjoyed it. But I did that, you know, and then my daughters were born and I switched to like stringing. So I was like kind of freelance. And so I was freelance while they were at home so I could be home with them. And honestly, it was in 2009. And I just thought, you know, I had read Twilight and I thought, you know, I bet, because I kind of had that idea. I had a book in me and I was like, I'd love to tell a story. And so I just kind of at night, I just kind of started writing. Like I would go upstairs, you know, once everybody was in bed, and I had a computer upstairs, and I would just, you know, start like just seeing, you know, I just started writing and seeing if how it would come out. And it was so funny. I was doing that for a while, and then my husband got out of bed one night. He came and he was like, "Are you having an online affair? What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "No." I was like, "Weirdo." I was like, "What?" It's, you know, and I was like, "I'm trying to write a book." And he was like, "Oh." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not cheating on you, goofball." I was like, "I'm trying to write a book." And so he was like, "Wow, you could totally do that." And I was like, "Well, I don't know." And so it was kind of a, so I had been writing for a long time. And honestly, before I got started as a print journalist, I worked at my college as an editor, like, and I was editing like courses with professors and stuff. So I kind of had a background already. And so it wasn't quite as hard for me to make the move to books. Books are longer. And that was my biggest fear, was like, I'm used to writing really short stuff, you know, because newspaper articles are really short, you know, usually. I wasn't writing those big, long magazine pieces like you'll get in some magazines like the New Yorker or whatever. I was writing, you know, regular sized. And so for me, the hardest part was pacing, because I would try to tell everything in the first 5 chapters, you know? And so I had to like learn to bring the story out, to like make the story. And so that took a while. That probably took 3 or 4 books before I could just sit down and like slow down, you know, and like set the scene and not, you know, like give it all away, you know, because that's how good journalism is. Good journalism is like, you should only have to read the first 3 paragraphs to know, you know, you don't bury the lead, which is a journalism term, which means you put the most important part of the story at the end, which is kind of the exact opposite for books, because you don't put the main, you know, right at the beginning. You like drag it out. And or you build to it, you build to it. So that's kind of how it happened. It took obviously time. I mean, for me to like the mechanics of like how to use grammar and how to, put together a scene and stuff I had, but it was kind of like the whole process of developing that, and not rushing, to the end, and so that was the biggest thing. But it's just like anything. Writing is a craft, and the more you do it, the better you get at it. And it's like you learn hopefully from what didn't work, and as you work with editors and readers and beta readers and all that, you get, you build your skills.
Yep.
It's like, doing anything like that, like being an artist, you get better as you do it, the more you do it. So
I love that.
And you're right. It's building skills. It's
yeah,
never okay, I've learned everything I have to learn. Now
no.
I'm just going to do. It's always.
Well, and you challenge yourself to learn new ways of doing things too, like, kind of trying different things that maybe don't always work, but sometimes, you try little different techniques and stuff, to keep it fresh. So anyway.
Cool.
So bringing it back to Twist a little bit, because we want people to, have some information so they'll go read it. You should go read it anyway, because it's fun and amazing. Going back to that, Susie, you had a question about the writing process for that.
What was your favorite scene to write?
My favorite scene. There were so many fun scenes in there. The scene that had me the most excited was when Pinky hit her home run. Did I just spoil that? I'm sorry. It's not really a spoiler, okay? Because they were already like talking about her, but that whole part of her playing baseball and just being a natural baseball player, I just thought was so funny because she's just, so determined. And I was a little bit, I'll be honest with you, I based that character a little bit on my daughter and a little bit on myself, because as a child, I was the only girl I had an older brother and he had all his friends and they would let me play, but I didn't understand that I was 3 years younger than them. That's a lot, 3 years, which is kind of the age difference between Owen and Pinky and the boys, because they're 8 and she's turning 5. So it's about the same. And my mom would always be like, I'd look up and you'd be gone. And I'd be like, when I was like 4 or 5, and she was like, I could not keep you. She's like, you always thought you could just keep up with them, go wherever they wanted. And I was like, well, and so I kind of remembered that instinct to just try to be as big as they were and as good at whatever they were doing as they were. So maybe Pinky was sort of my revenge of not being as good as they were, so I let her be a little superstar when it comes to baseball anyway. But anyway, so, and I have a lot of little cousins. I was like, my dad was the oldest of his siblings by a lot. And so, by like 10 years. And so when I was like 9 or 10 or something, my aunts and uncles started having kids. So I got to spend my teenage years watching them, and they had a bunch of little kids, and we were always together and just watching all their little personalities. They all pop up in my book. Be like, where do your little kids come from? I'm like, trust me. That one was a pain in the neck. One of them went through a so phase where anything you said to her, she would say, so, ugh. And I tell you what, you just want to strangle her. And I'm like, so I have all these little kids in my head, and I'm like,
whatever.
Little kids, because little kids, and I, it's like some people are like, you really write little kids good. And I'm like, because I was like, grew up with them, and they, they don't talk baby talk, and they think they're as big as you are, and they're bossy, and some of them are very sweet. Don't get me wrong, some are very sweet, but a lot of them are not. And we had a lot of personalities in my family growing up, as you can imagine. So it was fun. So that was one of my favorites, because she was just so funny. Although I really liked writing her interactions with Jessica a lot too, because she and Jessica were just that was just not gonna happen. And it was really fun to have them button heads, because I was like, yeah, they are just not, that ain't gonna work out. She was not having it.
Nope.
So that was your favorite part to write. What was the least favorite part to write?
Ugh, I always hate hurting my characters. So it's always that part where you have to write it. I mean, they can't just be happy and skip, into the sunset. There has to be a conflict. And so I always hate that part when they're like, when somebody gets hurt and there's crying, and, and they're like going to sleep by themselves and wishing somebody would come upstairs and talk to them. And they don't. And so, you know, it's just, yeah, those are always the hardest. I always take the longest to write those. And then I usually have to go back and rewrite them because I usually wrote it real fast. So it would go over with real fast. And I'm like, okay, go back and add some details. Let's make it a little more, you know, in depth. And so those are always the hardest.
I had a funny story that happened recently with an edit where when I edit, I work in Google Docs. So it's kind of a real time thing where the author
Yeah.
I'm working with can see as I'm working on stuff.
Mhm.
And there was a lull. And she messaged me and she's like, "Is everything okay? Because, you know, I just haven't seen you on for a bit." And I was like, I got to that part and I
Oh,
had
yeah.
to read it through to make sure that everything worked out. I'm like, I know it's going to work out, but I had to read it through and then I went back to edit
Yes.
it
I
because
had
I
to get to
had
the
to
end to
get,
know we made it.
yes,
And then I'll
I
come
had to
back
get
and
to
edit.
the end and know who made it so that I
Yeah.
could go back. And I'm like, give me like 24 more hours. I'm like right there. And then I went back and went through and
Yeah.
edited it because I needed to get through that
Gotta
part.
get
And
them back together. Get them back
yes, I
together.
can't imagine it's
Yeah.
easy for an author
It's
to
not.
write that and then to sit in it because you immerse yourself in it and then it's like
I know. It
I have to
sucks.
immerse myself in the suck. Yes.
Yeah, I
And it's
know.
not fun
It
to immerse
sucks.
yourself in the suck.
I know. And that's what's sad. I usually try to write as fast as I can and then I'm out of it. But then I'm like, no, that ain't gonna work. And so then I have to go back in and revise it and add some details. So
Yeah.
those are always the hardest.
Yeah. So that's why I'm sometimes quiet with my authors and I should warn them. I'm like, okay, I am at the suck. So let me read all the way through and then I'll go back. That's what's going
That's
on.
good though. I mean, if you do it right, you know, you really want to hear that everybody was crying.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
we're
Or I'm on
evil
the
like
edge of my
that.
seat and I'm digging
I
my
was
nails
crying
into
too,
my
if that
chair.
makes you feel any better. I was
Yes.
upset too. We were all upset. And then we got
Good.
through it together. We all got through it together.
That's another thing is when authors are like, "Why are you so mean?" And I'm like, "Dude, you made me cry first, so this is payback."
There you go.
So, Susie, you had another question going back to the writing process.
Do you have a favorite place to write?
Well, you know, I'll be honest with you. Where I'm sitting right now is where I do most of my writing, but sometimes my butt gets tired. So I'm like, ugh. So I also have one of those lap desk things with legs and stuff, and I have my laptop. So I write on Google Doc too. And I tell you what, it took me too long to put that together because I had been trying to send the Word doc back and forth between my laptop and my desktop. And you know what? It only takes one time of not doing it right. And you're like, wait a minute, where's that whole chapter that I wrote last night? And it's like, ah. So yeah, it only takes one time. And then one of my author buds was like, why aren't you using the Google Doc? And I was like, or the Google Drive. And I was like, I don't know. Why am I not doing that? So yeah, so just sometimes it's so obvious that you don't see it. But so I'll move around the house. Like sometimes I'll go sit on my bed and I'm always like, you know, my husband will come home and I'll be in bed. I'm like, I'm not under the covers. I'm sitting on top of the bed. It's because my butt got tired. And I'm like writing, you know, because I have my lap desk. And he's like, I didn't say a word. I'm like, I saw you thinking. Have you got out of bed?
Don't
Yeah,
judge
I
me.
got out of bed. I'm fully clothed. I'm not under the covers. I'm just sitting here.
I'm
Yeah,
working. Go away.
I know.
Do you have any,
Like, oh,
do you
it's
keep
okay.
any snacks on you while you're writing?
Well, I tell you, I have some chocolate stashed, and I'm usually like eating chocolate, which I know not terrible, but it's good. And you know, I did go through a phase when the girls were little when I would be eating goldfish all the time because you know I'd make them some goldfish and I'd make me some goldfish because you know everybody gets a snack. And so yeah, now I just take a break and go eat something. Now I'm like,
Yes.
I need to walk around a little bit anyway. I'm gonna go make some lunch.
Yes, I'm like, okay, why do I have to go into the kitchen to get this? I should have a fridge in here. And I'm like, no, if I had a fridge in my office, I would never leave.
I know. I know.
So it's so I get off my ass and go walk
Gotta
around my
get up and
house.
walk around.
Yes.
What's your favorite trope to write?
Hmm.
And one that maybe you would never write?
Well, I'll tell you. So my favorite trope to write, I really, 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 I mean, this is a tough one because I love the suspense. I love writing suspense. It's so fun and it kind of adds an element, you know, where you don't necessarily always have to necessarily break up the main couple when you have that suspense going. And so that's always fun because I hate breaking up the main couple because it makes me sad. But I do love the suspense, but I really enjoy the single parents, whether it's you know, the
Mhm.
dad or the single mom. Either way, I like both of them because those kids, like I said, I have all these kids in my head and they're all hilarious. And I just love pulling their little personalities in because they're just so much fun. They add so much, you know, and they're usually little kids always know what's going on, whether you think they do or not, as we all know in
Yeah,
real
they
life.
do.
If you've had kids, you know, they always know everything. So that's fun. So I like doing that. Now, as far as what I don't like or never want to write, and that's probably, I'm not a real super dark writer. I have friends who write super dark and they'll like send me their books to read sometimes. And it's like one time, one of them sent me one and it had like a rape in it. And I was like, no, I don't want to read this. And so I don't really like super duper dark, like super duper dark. Like I'll read, you know, I'll read some dark stuff, but I don't like it when it gets just really, I mean, it has to be really well done. And even that book, I put it in the freezer for a little while and then I came back to it and finished it and it ended up really well. I loved how it ended, but just getting through those scenes, I think my imagination's a little too vivid. And like I can't read Stephen King. If I try to read Stephen King, I'm like, I can't sleep at night because I'm convinced that whatever he wrote is coming to get me because it's just too vivid. Like I can just see it too much. And that's saying that's because they're such good writers. I mean, they're such
I know
talented
exactly what you're
writers that
talking about.
they're too vivid and it's like I can't read that because I see it too well. And so I guess if it was something I wouldn't want to write, it would be like horrifying dark. So I'm sorry, but I love Halloween and I love haunted houses, but I just can't read that.
There's a difference in spooky and sinister.
Just very upset. Like I don't listen to true crime podcasts. I tried because I love podcasts, and one of my daughter's friends was like, "You've got to listen to this true crime podcast. It's so good." And I tell you what, I got 2 episodes into it, and I was like, "Whoop, off, unsubscribe." I was like, "I can't listen to that. I'll never leave the house again."
Right, exactly. That's it.
I didn't know that was even possible to happen. I didn't know you could die like that. I'm like, oh my God. I know, right? I was like, why did you tell me to listen to that? Now it's in my head. I was like, yeah. So I know.
If it's on Criminal Minds, I can pretend it's not a real thing, right? So if I read it like that or watch it like that, I'm like, it's not a real thing. But then it's true crime, and you're like, oh shit, that really happens.
I know.
I don't need to know that
I
information.
know. I was like, I can't. I was like, I can't do that. I get too into it. And then it's like terrible stuff. And then I'm like leaving the house and like I couldn't even go for a jog. I was like going for a jog and I'm like looking all around. I'm like, what if somebody sneaks up behind me and gets me? I'm like, who wants me? I'm like having to talk myself out of it. Like, who wants to deal with you? I mean, seriously. And so I was like, you know, I got my phone in my hand, you know, I'm ready to hit the panic button if anything happens. Anyway, yeah. So
my husband has always said if somebody took me, they would bring me right back with an
they bring you back.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm like, who wants
I'm
to
a
deal with
lot.
you? Ugh.
Apparently, I'm a lot. And you know what? He loves every minute of it, but nobody else would.
You know, it makes us special. It makes us special.
That's
Anyway.
what my kids would say. You're so special. Like, I don't think you mean that the way I think you're meaning it, but
I do.
So I ask all the authors, if you had one piece of advice to give to a new romance author based on your journey, 10 years of this adventure, what would it be?
2. I saw that and I actually have 2. Number 1 was my biggest mistake, which I think, I don't know if we talked about this off air or on air, how I was talking about, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen when I wrote One to Hold. And I think I just talked about that. Anyway, I didn't think it was going to do as well as it did. So I didn't prepare, like I didn't have a newsletter set up. I didn't prepare to capture all of those readers who were in love with it and wanting more from me. So my biggest mistake, I would tell every author, even if you think, okay, I'm just doing this for a lark, just to see what happens, probably nothing's going to happen. It's probably just going to go, you know. So even if you think that's going to happen, just to be safe, set up your newsletter and have a link in the back of your book to get those readers, because One to Hold sold so many copies and I didn't set up a newsletter until probably the 3rd book in that series or the 4th book in that series, a really dumb amount of time. So that's the first bit of information. You've got to be able to get in touch with people who love your books. So, and they want more of your books. So you're not bothering them. Set up your newsletter. So that's my first piece of advice. That was a big mistake I made right in the beginning. But the second kind of moderately sized mistake, probably, I don't know, is stay in your lane. Melanie Harlow has a great talk about staying in your lane. Don't give them cake when they want spaghetti, or no, reverse that. Don't give them spaghetti when they ordered cake. And, you know, so it's like the promise that you make to readers. Like for me, my promise to readers is that I'm going to give you this type of a book. And so readers come to me wanting that type of a book. And if you switch it up too much and like try to write, you know, like something very off brand, you are going to lose readers, and it's also going to confuse readers. Going to be like, who are you? So you really need to identify who you are as an author, and like it or not, you got to stay in your lane. It's sort of like bringing up Stephen King again. He was like, I can't write small town mystery. I mean, he's like, or whatever, you know, something, you know, pirate books. He's like, I could, but I'd have to like change, you know, I'd have to start a pen name, which I think he did. But it's like, you know, Stephen King is a horror writer. He's a horror fiction writer, and he's good at it. And that's all he's ever done, right? He is the prime example. Readers know when he releases a book what they're going to get, and he gives them what they want. And that's why he's so successful. It's because you find your readers and then you build from there. And so that was the second thing that I played around in genres a little bit, kind of in the middle of my career, because I kind of got bored. You know, I was like, I'm bored with this. I want to try writing this. And it's like, you know, you lose readers when you do that. And readers kind of like, they look at your backlist and they're like, what? And so, you know, find who you are and just that's what you do. And all of your branding should look alike. All of your books, you know, need to match so that people know what they're getting. Because like it or not, I mean, you are a human, but you're a brand, you know, you're a type of book. And so, you know, it's one of those things that it took me a while to internalize, but I'm doing a much better job with it now. And it shows. I mean, it shows in, you know, in your career that you do better if you stay who you are. And if you really, really dying to write that whatever super off-brand science fiction fantasy novel, just come up with a pen name and do it.
Yes.
But realize if you write it as, you know, like if Melanie Harlow wrote a dystopian urban fantasy, everybody be like, what? So you have to stay in your lane. So that's kind of the smartest. And I just kind of internalized that a couple years ago. So anyway, but you know, but pretty much all my stuff is the same thing. But you know, I kind of had a couple of diversions off of that, and I've stopped doing that basically.
And that is the beauty of pen names. I mean, I think one of the amazing things about the industry itself is that there's so much variety, and you can create a pen name because if your brain is like, I can't keep traveling in this direction, I need to take a detour. Right. Creating that pen name allows you to create a new brand. It allows you to create a new audience. It allows you to use that creative side of yourself to say, hey, I have more in here than just, but right. I know my readers and I know this is what they're looking for. So if I promise them cake and I give them spaghetti, they're going to be confused and probably a little pissed off. Yeah. They might love the spaghetti, but if they're not in the mood for it, okay. So for me, this is the funniest thing. We had this the other night at dinner, this conversation. It's like when you pick up a drink and you think it's iced tea and it's Coca-Cola. Yeah. And you love Coca-Cola, but you were not expecting the fizz and the sweet. And all of a sudden you're like, not what I wanted.
You're Ted Lasso. You spit it everywhere. I know. It's
right. Like, exactly.
Right. Every time he got that sparkling water, he spit it all over the place. Anyway.
So there's a time and a place, and I can love both. But if I'm expecting small town romance and I get mafia dark,
I know.
What? I'm going to be a little confused. And yes. So what's next on the radar for you? What's coming up next?
Well, next is A Little Luck, obviously. You know, we have A Little Taste was Aiden, the oldest brother, and A Little Twist was Alex, the second brother, and then A Little Luck will be Adam, the youngest brother. They all have A names because that's what their mom did anyway. But I am their mom. No, I'm just kidding. That's what their mom did. And so she gave them all A names. But so Adam is up next. Adam and Piper. They're coming December 14th. That one's going to be a little more angsty. It might have a little suspense. There's an element in it because it's got a subplot in it, which is her mother, who we know up to this point as a doomsday prepper, I just love Martha. I cannot wait. So I'm as invested in Martha's subplot as I am in Piper and Adam getting
Oh,
together.
that's so exciting.
And I know it's going to be so much fun. I swear. And so I've got that's coming December, and then I'll have one more book in that series after that, and then I told you I'm wanting to do the next gen. I'm so excited about having a next generation series because, like I said, I've got all these awesome kids, and
Yeah.
I want to grow them up and their personalities and have them getting with the guys and getting the
I love
boys and
it.
the girls, and I'm so excited about it. I'm so excited. But anyway,
I love it. Well, and I love one of the elements of this series is that it's the three brothers and the three best friends.
yeah,
And I love that element of that connection where it's like a full circle type of thing. So
right.
having the next gen with the kids where it's bringing another layer
Mhm.
together, I think
No, I
is
can't
just
wait.
really
I love 'em.
cool. So we have our random this or that questions,
Oh, yeah.
and then we have something special right at the end of that before we say goodbye. But we're going to do our 10 questions first. So just a
Okay.
this or that. You don't have to think too hard. Julie, you're up first.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. I don't like tea. But...
Bad haircut or bad hair dye?
Ooh, that's interesting. That's a good one. I've had both. Probably dye because you can fix dye, but if you got a bad haircut, you gotta wait for that to grow out. I tried to cut bangs one time.
Oh,
Don't do it. Don't do it. Let somebody talk you out of it. Don't do it at 10 o'clock at night like I did. And I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna cut me some bangs." Oh God, it was
it doesn't end well.
so bad.
Hard
I nearly
rock.
cried. Anyway.
Yeah. Hard rock or country?
Oof. Now, when we say hard rock, what are we thinking?
Not
here's the thing.
Metallica.
Here's the thing. All right. So I've got a funny story there. I know we're supposed to be going quick. When I was in college, I was security at the concert stadium at the college that I went to. And at that time, Metallica had their Black Album was out and they were touring the Black Album. So I was security at their concert. Basically, they gave me a flashlight and said, if you see anybody climbing, shine the flashlight on and tell them to get down. If they don't get down, find somebody else. Don't do anything.
Yep.
I basically was just going around going, get down, get down. But no, by the middle of that concert, I'm up on the balconies going, yeah, with everything. Such a good concert.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was a killer concert. I'm gonna be honest with you, it was so good. And then I was a Metallica fan after that. So and my husband has convinced me that country music is good because he grew up in a small town and he loves country. So he's always playing it. So I've kind of gotten to where I like it. So that's a hard one, man. I don't know. Both. Can I say both? You gonna kill me?
Sure.
You can have
Sure.
both.
We'll allow it. Yes.
You will allow it.
And we'll table the conversation for our next dinner.
Exactly.
Yes.
I know.
Susie, you're up.
Beach or mountain vacation?
Beach. Come on.
Plan ahead or live in the moment?
Okay, so it used to be live in the moment, but now I've gotten older, I tend to plan a little more because I understand the benefit of planning now. So I'm a little more of a planner than I used to be. Because I'm a
morning person or night owl?
night owl. Ugh, mornings.
Cookies or cake?
Probably cake. Yeah, I'll go with cake.
Vanilla or chocolate?
Chocolate. Come on. Blah. Vanilla.
Draft or edit?
Edit. Drafting is so hard. Oh God. Edit.
Kindle or paperback?
Kindle. I never would have believed I'd say that, but I would Kindle.
I love
so
it
convenient.
because
I know it's
I
just
can
right
take
there.
20 books on vacation with me on my Kindle. I can't do
Well,
that.
and now my hand cramps when I'm holding a paperback. I know I'm a little delicate flower, right? But my hand, I'm like holding that book and I'm like, God, this is so heavy. This book is killing me to death. Anyway.
Well, and paperbacks for me are my little treasures. So like everybody knows, I
You don't read
love
'em.
getting signed paperbacks and they sit on the
Yes.
wall. And speaking of, so Tia sent me this.
Yes, I did. There
And
it
we're
is.
going to do a giveaway with this. So this is a little twist, and it's not just a book. I'll put pictures up, but it's a signed. You probably can't even see that because my lighting
Yay,
sucks.
there it is.
Ooh,
Signed
nice.
paperback, and some goodies to go with it. So
Nice.
flag to go
Awesome.
with. So keep an eye out. There it goes. Keep an eye out on the socials, on the Brayzen socials, and we will be putting this up for someone who has watched the podcast, and we'll have to put something in there like a little test, little question to say if they actually watched it or not. So we'll have to think of something to put up there. But keep an eye out on the socials when this premieres, when it comes out on YouTube, and we'll post the links everywhere. And we'll do a gift away for the book and the swag of A Little Twist by Tia Louise. Thank you, Tia, so much for sending that. And I can't wait for us to give that to someone. And thank you for being with us today. And this was so much fun. I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, oh my God, that was a lot longer than I thought it was, because it was so much fun.
Very chatty. Thank you all so much for having me. It was a blast. I had such a good time chatting with you guys.
You are welcome anytime. Anytime
as always.
Anytime. And the next time we see, we'll tackle hug you, because I miss you.
So awesome.
So thank you so much for joining us today. And hang tight for just a sec, because after we say goodbye, we'll chat for just an extra second. But
okay.
Bye.
Bye guys.
Bye.
Thank you.